The U.S. men are going to have their best possible roster for week 2 of the VNL. That's right, they are in full force for week 2 in Orléans, and this will be the first time that head coach Karch Kiraly, the absolute GOAT, has this good of a roster at his disposal. Now, joining the roster in week number 2 will be TJ DeFalco, Micah Christensen, Kyle D'Agostino, Gabby Garcia, and Matt Niggy. Gone from the roster from week number 1 are Cooper Robinson, Mason Briggs, Andrew Rowan, and Mike Marshman. The U.S. did bring 14 guys to Ottawa, and they're adding one more, bringing 15 to Orléans. And honestly, I think that's because of the play of Cole Hartke, right? I honestly didn't even expect him to play. He went out there, balled out, got 33 points in his debut. And I think that just kind of factored into some things because the U.S. is bringing 3 opposites to Orléans. Now, for the guys who are gone for this list, starting off with Cooper Robinson. If you didn't watch week number 1, you might be wondering, where is Robinson? I thought he was the golden child. And the reality was he was bad, right? We only really saw him against Germany and Canada. We saw him against Germany for a little bit. He started the game against Canada and lasted only a set. He was 1 for 9 offensively, a -11 efficiency, and his passing was horrendous as well. 10 targets, only 20% positive, 0% perfect. He got the yank and we didn't see him again. And honestly, that might be the end of the summer for Cooper Robinson until maybe we see him at the NORCECA Championships, depending on what Karch wants to do with that squad, considering they've already qualified and that tournament won't really matter for anything. Other guys who are missing, Mason Briggs. I thought Briggs did a really good job against Canada. I thought he passed well. I thought he played good defense. I do think we're going to see him in a Team USA jersey again, maybe not in the VNL this year, maybe at the NORCECA Championships at the end of the year. I thought Briggs did a pretty good job overall, and I was pleasantly surprised with how well he balled out. And then finally, Andrew Rowan. I thought Rowan did a pretty good job when he was in against Canada. We didn't really see him all too much, but with the return of Micah Christensen, there's just not that much room for him on this roster at the moment. Now, I think fans were actually pleasantly surprised with what they saw from Team USA in week 1, right? They took care of business against Czechia in Germany, got that reverse sweep over Canada using a bunch of the kids, and then went toe-to-toe with Italy in a really good match to close out the week 3-1. I thought they looked really strong, and you're starting to see, Karch's mold on this team coming together. I thought they just kept things really simple. They weren't trying to do too much offensively, and they try to limit their errors. Overall, they were 8th in attacking, hitting a 49% with a 36% efficiency. They were 2nd overall in blocking with 2.71 stuff blocks per set and an overall 6.24 overall positive blocks per set. And they're also only 6th in unforced errors, averaging just 5.71 unforced errors. So that's missed serves and just missed attacks, not including blocked attacks over the course of the matches. So 6th is pretty good, I'd say. Now you have to think some of those offensive numbers are going to get better with the return of Micah Christensen. Now Micah Christensen is coming off a fantastic season with Verona. He is one of the best setters in the world, if not the best setter in the world. And adding him to this offense is going to be very, very interesting. I thought Ma'a did a great job throughout the week, but there was no question how that setter hierarchy works on Team USA. Christensen number 1, Ma'a number 2. It's the tandem of the Micahs, and everyone loves it. Now, of course, in week number 2, you're going to have the addition of Gabby Garcia to this roster, and this is where we're really going to see that opposite battle heat up. I've told you before that I thought Jake Haynes was outstanding in week number 1. Now, actually, real quick, don't trust these stats here on the Volleyball World website. The efficiency actually isn't the efficiency number, it's their hitting percentage number. So you have to go over to the Volley Station website, which sucks because they don't show digs, but that's actually going to show you the proper efficiency. But still, I thought Jake Haynes was outstanding in week number 1. 67 kills. He hit 59% with a 48% efficiency. He had 9 blocks and 5 aces overall. And now Jake Haynes is on the leaderboard. He was 6th in points with 67 points, averaging 4.47 points per set, and that was only in really 3 matches played. He was averaging 3.53 kills per set. He's 11th in blocks overall, 9, averaging 0.6 blocks per set. And then he's also 16th in aces with 5 aces averaging 0.33 aces per set. Now you have to think that Gabby Garcia is going to get his shot, is going to get his minutes. He was the starter for this team last year, right? He's quite experienced. He naturalized himself from Puerto Rico to come play for this team. However, I do think Haynes is still that number one guy. I think the way he proved himself last week, the way he was able to put up a lot of points consistently and efficiently really bodes well for Jake Haynes on this roster. And I know over the years we've talked so much about Jake Haynes, but the reality is I think that there's a difference in style when you're comparing the way John Speraw to Karch Kiraly and just the way they approach the game. John Speraw is very tactical and he's very emotionally intelligent, right? That's why he had someone like Andrea Becker on his bench. He had like basically a licensed sports therapist on the bench with him at all times. And, you know, we know Jake Haynes is a little bit fiery. Now, when I've spoken to him, he's seen to be a very smart, a very intelligent man who knows a lot about volleyball, but we know he can pop off and let his emotions get the best of him. I'm someone who can relate to that. But I think when you're playing for someone like Karch Kiraly, who's known to be emotional, right? Who's not opposed to, showing his emotions on the sideline, that kind of works, right? There's no question who the alpha dog is in the Team USA dressing room when you have the GOAT of all GOATs leading your team. So I think their energies match a lot better than the way that Haynes and Speraw's energy matched before in the last regime. And I'm not saying there's a better way to do it. There's just different ways of approaching it. And each of these coaches approach it in their own way. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how much we're going to see Gabby Garcia versus how much we're going to see Jake Haynes. And on top of that, as I mentioned, Cole Harkey is still on this roster. We only saw him in the one match against Canada, but will he get slotted in at all? Just based off how skinny the U.S. is keeping the roster overall, right? They only brought 14 to Ottawa. They're only bringing 15 to Orléans. They're not really looking to have just practice players. So my assumption would be we're going to see Cole Harkey at least once. And that just makes the opposite battle a little bit more interesting, right? We haven't even seen Kyle Ensing yet. That remains to be seen if we're going to see him in week 3. But I think with the way that Cole Harkey is playing, the chances we're going to be seeing Ensing is, smaller and smaller. As I said, I think right now it's Haynes' job, and Garcia is going to have to do something pretty special to wrestle it away from him, or Haynes is going to have to show up much differently than he did in week number 1 in Ottawa. Now, week number 2 also marks the return of TJ DeFalco on the roster for the first time since Paris 2024, and not only are fans really excited to see TJ DeFalco back on this roster, but I think people are going to be really interested to see how it looks to have TJ DeFalco beside Matt Anderson, both playing on the left side. This is something they've never seen before on Team USA. Now, Anderson was pretty good in week number 1. If you look at his numbers, he scored 40 points. He hit 45% with a 37% efficiency. His passing was super solid as well, 43% positive with a 25% perfect. And as I said in my preview, I really think when you see these two guys playing in tandem, we're mostly going to see TJ playing that more offensive P1 role, and then Anderson playing the more defensive, passing, and leadership P2 role. I think part of the reason they're moving Anderson to the left side is to try to keep the load down on him, right? They want someone on the right side who can carry a lot of volume, someone like Jake Haynes, and they want to keep Anderson as fresh and as healthy as possible, considering he's a little bit older, or a lot older, than the rest of the guys on the team. And with Cooper Robinson going home, that really just leaves 4 outsides. You got Anderson, DeFalco, Ewert, and Champlin. And as I talked about in my preview, I do think there's quite the battle between Champlin and Ewert to figure out who's going to slot in or in the 4th or even the 5th outside spot, depending on who comes back next year with Russell and Jaeschke. And at the beginning of the summer, I really thought it was Ethan Champlin's spot to lose. And I thought he did a pretty good job in week number 1. But at the same time, I thought Jordan Ewert did a really good job coming in off the bench against Canada, bringing some energy, and then was super solid against Italy in their 4th match of week 1. Now, when you compare the stats between these two guys, I mean, it's hard to pick. Both of them scored 30 points of the week. Now, Champlin is a little less efficient right? He hit 41% with a 24% efficiency. Ewer was a little better offensively. He was 50% hitting with a 29% efficiency. However, Champlin is way better in service receive. Ewer out there was 24% positive, 12% perfect, whereas Ethan Champlin was 49% positive and 22% perfect. This is why I really think Ethan Champlin is still the number one go-to guy to be kind of the fourth or fifth outside on Team USA. Going to be probably one of the first guys off the bench, but I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them in action throughout this week as Karch continues to tinker with lineups and see just how different pairings work. Down the middle, it's clear that Taylor Averill and Jeff Drendrick are going to continue to be the guys. However, I do really want to see Merrick McHenry play a little bit. We only really saw him against Canada, and I thought he was outstanding. I mean, he was 11 for 16. He had a 69% with a 62% efficiency. He had 4 blocks out there, and I think he really deserves more and more of a shot to go out there and get some playing time. He's so physical. Once his reading gets to be a little bit better, and I think that's the advantage that especially Jendrick has over him. Once he can read a little bit more, I think he is going to be deadly. So I'd really like to see Merrick McHenry play a little bit more in week number 2. Now, I'm not entirely sure if we're going to see Matt Knigge. We didn't really see Mike Marshman at all in set number 1. To me, Knigge is head and shoulders behind guys like McHenry and Jendrick and Averill, but we'll have to see. And obviously in the libero position, you still have Eric Shoji. He's still the number 1 guy there. We saw Briggs do a really good job against Canada. I'm sure D'Agostino will get at least one match. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from Karch, that he's going to want to switch up the rosters at least one match through the week. But Eric Shoji has told me before that he doesn't like not playing, right? He likes being in there as much as possible. And there's no question who the number 1 guy in the libero position is for Team USA. Now, overall, I think week number 2 is going to be very interesting for this American team because they're playing a bunch of teams that's going to allow Karch to try some things out. You're going to play Cuba, who is going to get all their starters back, so you know that's going to be a fun little match, but still, they should have the upper hand in that one. They're going to play Iran, and now Iran is a hard-hitting team, and I'm bet you they're going to have a little bit more motivation in this matchup on June 25th. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was the match where Karch decides to play some of those younger guys, much like the match against Canada. I think he really likes undercutting the other team when there's a little bit of an emotional factor for the other team by playing the younger guys. Once again, these are just my thoughts, so we'll see how that goes. They're going to be playing Japan on June 27th and then wrapping things up against Serbia on the 28th. Now, the matchup with Japan is always going to be very fun. I think he's really going to want to test his starting lineup against Japan because it's such a different style of play. They play so fast. They play so precise. You've also got TJ, who's been playing the past couple of years in Japan. I really think Karch is going to want to have TJ matched up with either Nishida or Miura on the left side. In Japan, he's been one of the best blockers when he's been playing over there, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And then wrapping things up against the surprising Serbian team. And now Serbia is hit or miss. They can show up great, they can show up poorly, but that is a team who plays really, really physically. So I think overall, this is a really good week for Karch to work with pretty much a new roster. Sure, you're only bringing in 5 new guys, 2 new starters, but it is going to be a bit of a different dynamic. You're not working with certain guys who you have now for a year and a half. You're working with guys for the first time, like a TJ DeFalco. So I'm really interested to see how he works in the lineup and the different things we see with this team. I think their offense is going to get even more efficient, which is great news for American fans with the return of Micah Christensen and, of course, having TJ DeFalco in. And I would not be surprised if this team pushes to go 4-0 in week number 2. But what do you guys think? Do you think Christensen and DeFalco and the rest of the guys are going to make that much more of an impact? And how do you think this team looks pushing towards the VNL final here in 2026? Let me know down below and come join us over on the Volleyball Source Discord, the best online volleyball community in the world. Links are in the notes.